So welcome. Nice to be here. I'm also from New York, originally from Amsterdam, by the way, in Europe. Very happy to be here. Very happy to be with John here. John is a community expert, thought leader in the industry, I would say. And what Oscar mentioned, you know, the elephant in the room, that's what we hope to discuss today. How can community actually drive revenue or impact revenue? So for today, we'll discuss that. But before, I'd like to start with a little icebreaker, which is, John, if you had to describe your current community as a book or a movie or a play, perhaps, what would it be?
Yeah,
and why?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Super excited to be back here at CMX. And if you guys, it's your first time, like, you're going to keep coming back because this is one of the great event. And you sent me this, and I've been thinking about it the last few days about my movie, and trying to come up with a fun answer or something that made sense and relates to me. And I came up with The Matrix.
Wow.
Because you're really, like, community is about that search for the truth. It's around people connecting and trying to come against this plan to figure out what they're going to do, how are they going to fix it, how are they going to connect together beyond this surface level to really get beyond the matrix, right? Take the red pill, join the community, connect with people, and learn about technology, right? I'm a B2B tech community manager by trade, so I'm really talking about technology and how we're going to code. I think back to my time when I worked in the cybersecurity community, and we were on that front line. We were in this war, right, with the cyber people out there. So, Matrix.
I love that. That's a great analogy. Maybe before we dive in, so you're currently at CData. You've been in the industry for a while. What we're going to discuss today is kind of, I think, 20 years in the making?
Yeah, totally, it is.
So tell me a bit about kind of your background and what actually back in the day got you into the community space.
Yeah, my first take was like 17 years ago. I was working at a video game company in Mountain View, and I was like, let me install this thing called vBulletin. I can answer questions there. And before we knew it, we had 100,000 members, and I told my boss, like, I'm a community manager now. And I'm changing my title. And that was my start of my career. I worked my way through the gaming industry, through electronic arts, running the Sims as a sim master. That was my actual title. I thought that was cool. But it was like really learn about big communities, about engagement, about connecting, and about support. And that's when I got approached by a significant tech company, NetApp, to like, they really wanted to start community. And I was like, yeah, long hair. I was like, I don't even know who you are, but I know I can build you something cool. And that was the start of really kicked off my journey, is working at that company. That company grew very well. We won some awards, and 10,000 members in the first month, and hockey sticked, and went from there, going from tech company to tech company for the last 17 years, running teams of community managers up to 50 at one agency that I worked at. And now, kind of going back to my roots of being just a community manager, like, you realize that you have a passion for one thing, and it's getting deeply involved in one community, being the voice and the face of that community and extending it out, and that's where my passion lies. So I'm happy to be back at CData. We've been building a new community from scratch for last year, and the numbers and the metrics we're going to talk about here, it's been something I've been working on for my career, is being able to show ROI, right? Because at these bigger tech companies, if you can't show impact, like, you just don't have a job. Like, when reorg happens, I've been there. You're gone, right? So I've realized that having concrete numbers is key for me to maintain my job and to maintain the community program over a long period of time. The average age of community is 7 years, right? And growing. So I think people really need to change, like, their view of the community in their first, what am I going to do this 6 months, 1 year? It's like, what is your 5-year plan? What's it gonna incorporate? And my boss knew, it's like, hey, after year 1, we'll really start to show numbers. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Awesome. Excited. We will leave some room for Q&A at the end, by the way, so save your questions for later. Talking about community-led growth and the impact on sales and driving engagement, these are obviously all very loaded terms. So let's maybe start with level setting. What does engagement actually mean to you? And as a follow-up, how do you actually measure that?
So to me, engagement is one of the easier things to show and report, right? We're talking about page views, content, replies, how many people are converting to members versus anonymous, right? And showing that impact on the growth of your content. is one of the easier things to calculate. Most community platforms out today, you can see total comments, how many people are signing in, and come up with what your engagement ratio is, right? How many people are visiting a site versus how much content's going in. And doing that simple math there will give you a baseline engagement metric. But really, these are my marketing numbers, or vanity metrics, what people will refer to as well too. But something you need to show, right? Because people want to show how many people are going and how it's growing as a whole. But to me, that is table stakes. This is like your baseline metrics, and from there it expands.
Exactly. And has this changed over time, by the way? So engagement, kind of say 10 years ago versus now?
Engagement hasn't changed at all, really, in the last 10 years. We're reporting on the same kind of metrics, right? How much content in, how many people, how many page views, right? And these numbers have been something I've been reporting on since the very beginning, right? Manually in vBulletin, just calculating it off the page, to now we're, I'm automating it all into a CRM, showing it in automated dashboards. So technically, it's gotten more advanced, but the numbers on engagement are still the same baseline numbers for around engagement.
That's good. That's good to level set. So let's up the ante now and kind of go to the next phase. So how did this evolve in actually showcasing well, first of all, driving behavior or community-led growth that could impact sales, and then two, how do you measure that, and how has that grown over time?
Yeah. So I've known for years that, and heard from many other community experts, that community impacts sales, right? People that buy your product, there's a higher propensity for people to buy or to renew if they use or engage on your community. And some big industry experts have posed those out there over the years at events just like that I'm speaking at, saying, hey, this is what we're able to show. And I've always struggled to tie those knots together, right? To actually show impact to revenue. So this has been one of my holy grails for me for the last 10 years, is actually show impact on sales. So when I started at CData, it was really, okay, I knew certain things that I needed to do to even get close to proving that. And the first step was having a single identity, right? Having a single sign-on system and an identity provider that was adopted across the corporation and integrated with our CRM. And this was one of the key components. That way, when someone signs up for my community, they're tagged as a campaign, get into our CRM, and their activity. Along with integrating our community platform with our CRM, we're able now to say, okay, a person logged in or did some activity, I'm able to increase them through the sales funnel and increase them to a marketing qualified lead by community-based activity. So that is kind of the base, getting that set. So now I have that kind of groundwork set, and now I'm seeing the membership coming in, I'm tying it back to their accounts, they're in my CRM. So now I can start to do the reporting downline. It definitely takes months or quarters to actually get real numbers, right? Because sales, depending on what your sales cycle is and how long it takes to buy your product, it could be a couple month or 6 month process for a sales cycle to complete in an enterprise B2B level. So after the course of a year, now I can start seeing real numbers, and I'm able to track down on impact on revenue. I'm able to show what is my, we were able to show 4.5 million in influence revenue over the course of a year. This is a significant amount of money. If you're looking at what you're investing in community and saying, hey, we're impacting, 4.5 million in impact, revenue share around 1.6, and then we can even show direct impact, right? We're direct sales from a community, at like 100K, right? So this is not any chump change. We're talking about a significant impact to the business, and being able to show that and surface that in dashboards, that they're now able to bubble up into larger sales dashboards and say Tableau or something like that, right? Where you're able to show a combination of data, a mashup. It's now automated, so I don't have to be sending this report to my CMO or to my CFO or to my executives. They're already in the standard dashboards that they get. It's already included in the marketing overview, right? What the engagement is, what the sales impact is.
I love that. And being a sales leader myself, and having sold community and built teams that sold communities for the past 5-6 years, I know how impatient sales leaders can be. And I think also two questions here for the folks here is, one, change management is, I'm sure, something that you all have challenges with internally. This all sounds great, but how can we convince the C-suite also from the impact? What is kind of the workload or potentially the change management load to get this done? And then maybe the second question is, how patient was your leadership, and kind of guide us or help us guide through that. Because if, maybe 2 months in, you're still not showing any results, they might be like, yeah, it's not working, let's go to the next thing. And we want to prevent that, because we all know it takes time in community to actually drive engagement and to get results. So help us understand what your process is there.
So you're right, having buy-in from the executives and what they're doing from a top down and from a bottoms up, having that support is critical. And one of the things, I knew that going in, because this isn't my first community gig, and I've been through quite a few companies and as a consultant, that I had a level set when I was in that interview process. Is there a budget? Do we have support? Do we have executive buy-in? And the answers were yes, and that's why I accepted that job, right? It's because I knew I had a high chance for success, because I was meeting with one of the founders, and he's like, we want this. We want this. It's all the way up from the executive, from the founders. This is what we're doing, and that's why they brought me in at that point, right? That they already knew they wanted to go down this path. So that was one of the reasons why I did accept that job. Mm-hmm. I've been at jobs where it's hard road, right? You're not there. That's when the numbers come in, right? So if you can show concrete numbers, these people, we have page views, we have membership, we have growth, we have content, we're impacting sales, and then the support implications as well, too, something we haven't talked about, but is a major component, especially around B2B tech communities, is the support aspect. And getting that right is like critical to having your community. It's like the community building blocks, right? There's certain components of your community. You can't put them all in there at once, right? We try to get one use case at a time. So support, okay? When we first started, we got support, let's get some knowledge. Let me build a relationship with that support organization to make sure they're involved. I have buy-in from the support. I have dedicated support people to answer those questions, setting myself up for success around that. And then expanding, okay, now my product guys, right? I'm going over to the product teams. Hey, can I get your support? Can I get your announcements, your notifications? Can I put you on a list if I have questions? You're involving them, right? Now then you're moving on to like sales engineering, right? They're talking, they're engaging with people. Get them on board, moving on to like a partner team, getting them involved. I heard one community manager told me this years ago, which has stuck with me all this time, is you want to be horizontally integrated within your organization, not siloed. So where there's pretty much everybody in your community can get some benefit from having a community, right, within your organization, whether it's product, whether it's engineering, whether it's support, whether it's marketing. All these groups you can show different ROI for each one of those verticals. So that's when the numbers, I try to focus on department-specific ROI and metrics, right? What's in it for the support team? What's in it for the marketing team? What's in it for the sales team, right? And that's why I've been pretty successful over the time.
And I mean, as we all know, community, as you mentioned, it stretches the whole company and it can impact the whole org. But it's very difficult from the start to get buy-in from everyone.
Yes.
From your experience, would you, like this crawl, walk, run approach, would you start with maybe the part of the org that has maybe the highest propensity to buy in, and then just amp it up from there?
Yes, that's exactly it, right? So depending on where you're hired in the organization, where you're brought in, what type of, I was hired in the marketing organization, so I'm thinking, okay, marketing first. So that's engagement, content, membership, outreach, newsletters, events, I'm thinking that in the beginning. But quickly, I'm thinking, okay, people are asking a lot of technical questions, so I need to quickly pivot over to get my support lined up, right? And then after that, once I got them lined in, then I'm going to that next person, right? So I'm not trying to do it all in 1 month, 1 week, having all these teams bought in by the time we go live, right? I'm trying to have one team kind of bought in by go live. And then I'm over the course of the year, now I have all these teams on board, right? To now we're even looking at education and training and trying how we can involve that in the community. And that just got approved as a project to start to integrate an LMS into the community, right? And that's a big component of communities is that training and education side too. It's one of the pieces I've been missing to what I try to realize is a fully realized community serves the whole entire company, right? And so until you're quite there, your community's not quite done, right? I guess I got to experience that when I was, working at, say, like Oracle. The community's been around for 12 years, and it's fully realized, right? It's impacting all the organizations. Then it's more about maintenance and upkeep and ops and stuff like that because it's already a well-running, oiled machine. Versus in these early stage community, if your community is year 1, 2, 3, you're still looking for those support. You're still looking for those internal champions, right? And how you can support them, right? I made t-shirts for the internal people. I send them stuff. I gave them stickers. Or I give them badges. I give them reputation on the community and try to make the employees of my company feel valued. Because I always said, like, more employees you have involved in the community, the bigger your community can be. If you think like an Oracle community, there's thousands of employees contributing content into that site. That's why it's so big, right? So if your company's smaller, you have like 1 or 2 people committing content, feeding the community, it's only going to be so big. You get 10, you get 20, you get 25 people from your company. Now the community is much more. It's got much more purpose and then diversification of content.
4.5 million in driven pipeline. I'm sure the CMO is very happy when he looks at those dashboards.
Yes.
But obviously it didn't start with that. What was kind of what's your best practice in kind of being transparent and sharing numbers? Because my experience with a lot of community folks, you know, in the beginning when you're not hitting those numbers, you're maybe a bit afraid to share them upwards because, you know, you're not where you want to be and you know that. But what is kind of your experience in being overly transparent, or how would you drive that narrative internally?
You know, it was like that even at this place. We had some membership goals that, you know, we didn't necessarily hit, right? And I was like, well, membership's not everything, right? Let's like look at the quality of engagement, look at the frequency of engagement, let's look at what clients, what customers are actually signing up. So I started to show reports about here are the companies that are in the community, right? Because I'm able to tie identity from the user back to a corporation. So now on a weekly, I don't necessarily, I'll say, yeah, here's some of the top influencer, but I'll say, here's the top corporations that are in my company. And that like, whoa, hey, this is one of our biggest clients. They're over there using the community. And then also, after being there for a little while, it's like, hey, you put these expectations of you want 100% growth or 150% growth of the community in a year. Well, did the company grow that quick? And so one of the things I try to consult on, tell people is your community will only grow as fast as your company's growing, right? So if you're only growing 10% a year as a company, don't expect your community to grow 50, 60% in a year because you didn't onboard that many new customers. So if your company is growing at a pace, a good tech pace, 30%, 40%, and then you can match your community growth around that same rate for the year, you're doing really good. You're never going to get complete growth, so I'm really trying to get a percentage underneath our company growth. So we grow 35%, I'm aiming 25% growth in my community, right? Because the reality is not all companies, all the members are going to join within that organization. So I judge my numbers off what my corporate expectations of growth, right? They'll tell you in the year we expect to grow this much for the year, and then I'll key off my goals for the year off that company growth model. So one of the things I learned at another big tech company is tying back my company goals to corporate goals. Corporate initiatives, the core, you should probably have like core values, right? Mission statement comes out, these are the 3 things we're working for the year, right, at a company. I always try to tie my goals to the community directly to those. And if I didn't, and it was not as good for me, right? I didn't get as much budget, right? You're trying to ask for your things. Like now I'm trying to ask for an LMS, but I'm saying, hey, I'm saving all this money. It's not as hard of a question now, right? Because we're showing an impact. And so I can actually say, I need a new moderator, or I need a content writer. I can justify it now because we're showing this real impact to the business.
I love that. Final question, and we'll open up for some Q&A. Any key learnings in terms of something that you would do differently?
Do differently, like
looking back.
Looking back, so what I've done now versus what I did in the beginning is having everybody try to agree on everything in the beginning. And getting a big board together, trying to discuss the structure of the community. Like, it's better just to like make those decisions and then roll and edit them as you go. I think a lot of people get into this planning phase where they're planning, and they don't execute. The community, you just need to execute, and iterate. Change. You know, look at your metrics. What pages aren't working? Which things aren't driving? Like one of the things I'm looking right now is conversion. So conversion from unknown to unknown. So how many people are coming from my unique visitors to a sign up, right? And doing that math, like how many unique visitors, how many people are signing up per month, and trying to get that conversion rate up. So a lot of the time is usability. It's not necessarily the content, you know, or that. It's like, is the sign up on? Is there something enticing enough on the homepage? One of the things I changed differently in the beginning, I used to throw everything up on the homepage, right? As much as I can, fill it up there with content. And after working at very large organizations, you realize that people actually drill down a lot more than you think. Yeah. And the homepage needs to be more inviting, more webby, if you would, right? If I can use it, not even really a word, but more website-ish, to where you're driving people to sign in, dive deeper, and get that length of page views up, right? How session length and page view length up, because page view length up, if they have more page views, they have a higher propensity to sign in, right? So the more content they view or read, the more likely they are to sign up and make a comment. And so I'm looking at that conversion ratio as like a really, something I haven't focused on in the past, but something now that I have a lot of my things honed, you know, working right, now I'm like, okay, how can I make it a little bit better? How can I get more out of it? And I think that conversion ratio is something I'm really trying to look at for this next year.
I love that. Thanks, John. Opening it up to the group upstairs and here. Any questions? We have mics if you want to walk up. If not, I can repeat your question.
Yeah, go for it.
Found that people in those like B2B technical communities are really skeptical of being sold to, and if they are, how do you kind of navigate that balance?
Yeah, so the question for over here and then on the video is, are people coming into the community more skeptical about being sold to or having that marketing influence, right? So yes, me as a community person and a community manager, I've always strived to not go for the hard sell, but advertisement of things and events and things that are coming out are a huge win, right? When new products are coming out and then announcements, the community members, they still want to know what's going on. And we find that community members come back to the community for their information versus going to the website, right? Because they know it's updating, they know it's changing. You'll see existing customers tend to go to these other sources, not back to your main website all the time, right? I've been a customer for a year. You know, I usually don't go to the .com main part, right? But they go to that community. So having little sidebar, you know, not making it overly too, you know, advertising right on the site, but I find out that having minimal sidebar ads and having stuff about events being in there is acceptable, right? But I don't have people in there trying to say, hey, I see you're talking, can I sell you, can I set up a meeting? I don't really like support that type of activity of connecting directly on a sale to a community member, right? We have that stuff going in through like our CRM, go through the sales funnel. If they engage, they go through to an MQL, and then the salesperson can contact them via that mechanism because they can see their community activity and then use that as context within a direct message through, you know, email connection through the CRM saying, hey, that I saw you posting on the community, had some questions. And I think that's more ethically, you know, appropriate versus a DM in a community saying, you were talking about this and I want to pitch you something. I don't think that's leaves a good taste in the mouth, right? So there is a balance, right, between selling to people and then, but the reality is people are existing customers. New stuff comes out, new offerings come out, we want to show them. Yep.
We do have mic runners, so just raise your hand and we'll get a mic to you. We are recording, so we got one on the side.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I hit my back.
Logistics. I have a question about the community piece. I find that a lot of the communities I build, they come for me. And then when I try to engage someone else to replace me, it goes down, all of the numbers. Yeah. So I'm curious, how do I continue to build a community without it being so leveraged on me? And what is the difference between finding that balance between my personality drawing people and them actually caring about what I'm talking about at the company that I work at?
Great question.
That is a great question. And the reality is you have a huge significant impact on it. I went away for 2 weeks. I saw a 15% drop in activity on my community. That's facts and reality. If you have a product and you have if you have a product and you have a bad product manager, the product is not going to do good, right? If you have a bad product manager, right? So the same thing applies to community. If you don't have a good community manager, someone who's engaging, who's connecting with people, the community is just going to be all right. The thing I'd say that is making those relationships within the organization, within your peers, and getting them involved in the community. Like I said, the more community people you have involved or invested in the community, the less you have to do, right? So for instance, like at Big Oracle, right, I don't have to talk much because I have product managers that are super invested in the community and have their own identity and their own following and their own audience. Finding who your techie rock stars are, right, and elevating them in the community, giving them a special profile, highlighting them, making them a featured member, you know, trying to elevate their presence will alleviate some of that burden off you. But the reality is that almost every one of my communities, I was like the main driver of those activities. I know at one of my community for a long time, I was like the #1 guy on the leaderboard for years, talking like 3-4 years. And then a guy passed me and I was like, yes, the community is working. Someone has more points than me, right? And then we went back and, this is a funny story. We went back and forth, and then one day I was like migrating a whole bunch of blog posts in the community. I did it on the back end. I didn't realize it was gonna assign me a bunch of points. And I got like 30,000 points and I went way up on the leaderboard, and the guy that was like the #1, he immediately, within like hours, he's like, that's not fair. You can't do 30 points in a day. And I was like, what are you talking about? And then I went and looked. I was like, oh, bro, sorry, man. I didn't realize that. And I went back and I rolled back my points in the back end to take those out because it wasn't what I was trying to do. But he was very sensitive about being knocked down after one spot by me. So it's fun like that, right? I think as a community manager, if you're don't have a passion for the topic of your community, then it's only going to be surface level for you. But having that passion, that's what makes a good community manager, is being able to relate to people. I take a sociological approach to my community, thinking about society and sociology and psychology in there and how I'm relating and making myself available, but not too available. So that's the other thing. If you're an early community manager, I learned this the hard way, right? You're like, get a message, they want something, you're like, boom, on it right away. And then you set up this level set that you're going to be like instant on, right? And then you'll get burnout, right? So setting a level spec of expectation, you're not going to necessarily respond to them instantly. Setting SLAs for yourself in your head that, okay, within a day, I'm going to make sure I'm responding and doing stuff. But setting up that expectation from your coworkers and from community members that you're not an instant on will definitely keep your longevity going for, you know, not getting burnt out as community manager. Because if you're reading and responding instantly all day long and you're at a high volume community, say you're getting 2,000 posts a day and you're reading it all, right? It's, yeah, it can be a lot, right? And so using tools and things like that to sift through content and using moderators, if you get to that scale, you really leverage your moderators. Like for instance, like EA, like I didn't read everything, 2,000-3,000 posts a day. I would just read my moderator inbox, right? And they would highlight stuff for me to go and that I needed attention to. So having good moderator staff, if you're scaling, right, is kind of really key. Another question? You have a question?
So I'm often finding myself as the gatekeeper or even like the community police internally, really trying to teach my organization that we need to give more than we take. What is some of your advice on like getting internal employees to understand a community is about giving? I often find product marketing, sales, like can we do a user interview? Can we get this? Can we get this? And I'm like, no. We need to build trust and loyalty before we start asking. And we haven't been giving enough. So how have you kind of throughout your journey?
Yeah, it is a give and take, right? The relationships, you can't, what they refer to as social currency, right? You can't ask for something unless you've given something. It's just not how it works, right, in society, right? You give something and you get something back. So if we're not giving insider information, training, resources that they need to do their job, especially this tech B2B market, right? It's people are trying to get a job done. They want their answer. 9 times out of 10, they search on Google and they find a link to your community and they go there and they're reading that knowledge-based article, that discussion, that thread that's going to solve their problem. So solving their problem, making sure your content is clean, right? And then getting the support internally, that comes back to the numbers, right? Do I have a problem now getting support to answer questions when I showed them I was saving them $400,000 a year in case deflection? No, they answer questions all day long now, right? It supports the sales guys. I'm getting more support now. Now that I'm just started those sales metrics, I just got like last week. So I was like super excited, got back from vacation, I saw my dashboard and I was like, oh, yes. So now I can start surfacing those up to the sales organization and now hopefully get more involvement from the sales engineering. So like if you're in the tech space, this SE guys, those are like gold, right? They know they're talkers, they know the content. It's always hard for them to get them involved in the community because they're busy with the clients, right? But now I could say, hey, you're reaching multiple clients, right? My aha moment for this was at a company called NetApp, where I started building groups, private groups for customers. Right? So if you're an existing customer, you had a private group on the community, you had your account manager, you had your support lead that was assigned. These are enterprise class accounts, so they have like a team assigned to them, right? And this guy comes to me, he's like, I built like 4 or 5 of them for his clients, and then he comes to me one day, he's like, you got to come to senior sales leadership and present. He's like, I just posted this presentation on there, and then it was just a new offering, and then like within an hour, my client called me on the phone. He's like, I want to buy that. And he closed $1.5 million in sales off a posting in the community. After that, I went and posted that did a presentation at a senior sales summit. I had a request for 75 more groups after that. So to me, it's the numbers, right? If you can show them how it's going to affect their part of the business, right? Engagement, surface metrics, right? How's it going to affect their business, right? Is it product through ideation, right? Are you getting feedback from the customers about what your product and we can make the product better? Is it from retention? People that use and engage on our product, they're retaining, they're renewing at a higher propensity. People that sign up for the community, they're buying the product. And then on the support side, right? They're getting the help they need without having to send them an email or call, because we all know that's where the costs really come in.
Hey, John, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Well, you know that I run a B2B tech community as well, and
Yes.
you mentioned this, you just mentioned it. I'm really curious to learn a little bit more about the methodology that you use to calculate support deflections, because I find that to be very challenging.
Yeah, so I was able to, like, after hearing a bunch of people like present and theories on how you can do this, I've adopted the theory that what we do is calculate what the average, worked with my finance team, my chief CFO, right, to come up what is an average cost of a ticket, right? So that was, it took me a while to get that number, but once I have that number, you know, we came up to, through the finance team, that's a $200 ticket price. So every ticket in on an average, $200 for them to come in there, right? So with our community platform that we're using, I'm able to ask and answer questions and mark them as answered, right? So for me, I'm taking question asked, answered questions as my hard number, and then I'm also calculating a view count, right? So I heard a community manager a long time ago saying that, you know, acquainting, I've adopted a methodology of 10 to 1, right? So I can, in the back, I can say how many people viewed support content, right? So I can say, okay, 5,000 support views per month on my support content, knowledge-based articles along with questions, right? And so I'm able to take that number, do a 10 to 1, along with my real value, question answered and answered, right? So and I take those two numbers, I come up with 2 separate values, and then I add those 2 together. I came up with a total value, about $478K in savings for the year for the company. So, you know, these are real numbers coming from finance, coming directly from the platform, and people have a, you know, support or belief in those numbers versus some of the things where I had to do influence or approximation or, you know, correlation, you know, and no one ever really was like, it didn't get a lot of love, right? But now I'm saying, okay, I got an actual ticket value. I know how many questions were asked and answered. I know how many people are viewing my support content as well, and then reducing that 10 to 1 just to give a little bit of, you know, margin, you know, because I know it's not 1 to 1 on views, right? So I adopted a 10 to 1 principle on that.
Is that 10 views equals 1 case difference?
Yes. And I've heard a couple community leaders over the years talk about these type of, you know, metrics on how they're calculated, and it made the most sense to me when I'm trying to come up with my methodology for calculating that. And my executive team, I proposed, like, this is how I'm going to calculate it, and they all agreed that that made sense to them and could accept that as a deflection number. So there was a process of me, you know, coming up with my methodology, getting it accepted by my senior leaders, and then now I'm able to roll it out, and they don't question where the numbers came from, right? They know my methodology, and they know where the numbers are coming from, and it's kind of accepted within my company.
think we're at time. So I'm going to give it back to you, but first of all, give a big round of applause here. Obviously.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll be around a couple days.
Yeah, go talk to John.
Yeah, I'll be around. Love to talk about more.